The giant stood 7 feet tall in the shadow of the mountains, his weathered face turned away from the town below. They called him cursed. When thunderclouds gathered, folks said it was his doing. When sickness spread, they whispered his name. For 30 years, he walked alone through the territory, marked by scars no one dared ask about. The Apache who was too big, too strange, too silent to belong anywhere. Even his own people kept their distance, warning their daughters never to meet his eyes. Fear had built a fortress around him that no one tried to breach. Until her, a healer with eyes that didn't turn away and hands that didn't tremble when he approached. Could a woman who mended broken bodies be the one to finally reach a heart the world had abandoned? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if the story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Lily Morgan secured her medicine pouch at her hip as the wagon jolted over another rut in the trail. The leather was worn smooth by 20 years of use, stained with herbs and tinctures that had saved more lives than she could count. At 46, the lines around her eyes had deepened, but they crinkled now with determination rather than worry as she surveyed the rugged landscape ahead. "Not much farther to Copper Creek, lady," called Jeremiah, the trader who'd offered her passage. "Though I still say a woman traveling alone is asking for trouble, healer or no." Lily smiled politely, having heard the same concern in a dozen variations since leaving St. Louis 3 years ago. After Thomas died, the sympathetic glances from neighbors had slowly transformed into questioning looks. A widow ought to remarry or move in with family, not travel the frontier treating both settlers and natives with equal care. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Halloway, but trouble seems to find folks whether they're asking or not." She adjusted her wide-brimmed hat against the afternoon sun. "And sickness doesn't much care if the doctor wears trousers or skirts." Jeremiah chuckled, though the sound held little humor. "It ain't sickness that worries me, ma'am. It's what roams these territories. Heard tell of a giant Apache that haunts these mountains. 7 feet tall, they say, with the devil's own curse following him." Lily had heard whispers of this local legend at their last stop, a trading post where the shopkeeper's wife had crossed herself at the mere mention of the giant. "I found most devils are just men when you look at them in proper light," Lily replied, fingering the contents of her medicine pouch. Inside lay her surgical tools, wrapped in clean linen, alongside packets of herbs labeled in her neat handwriting. Some remedies she'd learned from medical books her physician father had left her. Others came from Creek medicine women, Navajo healers, and Mexican curandras she'd met in her travels. "Not this one," Jeremiah insisted. "They say storms follow him. Livestock dies when he passes near. Even his own kind want nothing to do with him. Superstition is a powerful disease, Mr. Halloway. Harder to cure than most. Call it what you want. Just promise you'll stay clear of the northwest foothills. That's his territory." Lily nodded, though she'd long ago learned never to make promises about where healing might take her. Her late husband had understood that about her. Thomas had been a gentle soul, a schoolteacher who encouraged her interest in medicine even when others called it unladylike. His consumption had progressed too quickly for her skills to save him, but his passing had freed her to follow her calling across the frontier. The wagon hit another deep rut, and this time the crack of splintering would accompany the jolt. "Damnation," Jeremiah muttered, pulling the team to a halt. He climbed down to inspect the damage, and Lily followed, stretching her stiff limbs. "Axle's cracked," he announced after a moment. "We'll have to stop here for the night while I fix it. Should make Copper Creek by tomorrow afternoon." Lily surveyed their surroundings, a small clearing beside a shallow creek, rimmed by pine trees with the mountains looming beyond. Her gaze lingered on those distant peaks, where dark clouds gathered despite the clear sky overhead. "That's strange weather," she remarked. Jeremiah followed her gaze and stiffened. "That's his doing. The giant. Those clouds follow him." "Clouds follow mountain ranges, Mr. Halloway. It's the way of nature. Not these clouds. He began unhitching the horses with hurried movements. We'll camp here, but we're keeping a fire going all night. As Lily helped set up their modest camp, she found her eyes drawn repeatedly to those mountains. Something about the strange, isolated storm called to her curiosity rather than her fear. In her experience, those most feared by society were often the most in need of compassion. She unpacked her bedroll and supplies, setting her medicine pouch carefully beside her. Its familiar weight against her hip had been her constant companion through loneliness, danger, and doubt. Inside was everything she needed to heal the sick and injured. Everything except a cure for the kind of isolation she recognized in the stories of the cursed giant. Morning came with the smell of coffee and bad news. Jeremiah knelt beside the wagon's broken wheel, his expression grim as he examined the splintered wood and bent metal. "It's worse than I thought, Mrs. Morgan. Axle's not just cracked. It's split clean through. And now I see the wheel hub is damaged too." He stood, dusting his hands on his trousers. "I can make a temporary fix, but it won't hold both of us and my goods. I'll need proper tools from Copper Creek." Lily sipped her coffee, considering their predicament. How far to town? 15 miles, give or take. And how long for you to go and return with supplies? Jeremiah squinted at the sun. "If I ride one of the horses, I could be back by tomorrow midday." Lily nodded, decision made. "Then that's what we'll do. I'll stay with the wagon." "Ma'am, I can't leave you alone out here." His eyes drifted toward the mountains. "Especially not this close to." "Mr. Halloway," Lily interrupted gently, "I've camped alone in territories far more dangerous than this. I have food, water, and my rifle. I'll be perfectly fine." Reluctance lined his face, but practicality won out. An hour later, Lily watched him disappear down the trail, leading one horse and riding the other. The sudden silence felt like a physical presence, not unwelcome after days of Jeremiah's constant warnings and stories. She spent the morning taking inventory of her supplies and gathering herbs she recognized along the creek bank. Wild yarrow for bleeding, willow bark for pain, and mint for upset stomachs. Her practiced hands stripped and sorted the plants, hanging some to dry from the wagon cover. By midday, dark clouds had gathered overhead, contradicting the clear morning skies. Lily secured her drying herbs as the first fat raindrops fell. The storm came quickly, too quickly to be natural, a small voice whispered. She shook away the thought as she sheltered under the wagon. The rain stopped as suddenly as it had started, leaving a strange stillness in its wake. Lily crawled out from her shelter and froze. The wagon leaned at an even steeper angle than before. The damaged wheel now completely collapsed under the weight shifted by the rain-softened ground. "Well, that complicates matters," she murmured to herself, circling the wagon to assess the damage. The axle had snapped completely, leaving the wagon bed tilted precariously. Several of her precious medicine bottles had tumbled out, though thankfully none had broken. As she gathered her scattered supplies, a prickling sensation ran up her spine, the unmistakable feeling of being watched. Slowly, she straightened and turned toward the tree line. Nothing moved among the pines, yet the sensation persisted. Lily reached casually for her rifle, propped against the wagon. "Hello?" she called, her voice steady despite the quickening of her pulse. "Is someone there?" Only the dripping of rain from leaves answered her. She scanned the forest edge carefully, then gasped softly as her eyes found what they'd initially missed. A figure standing so still he might have been part of the landscape. He was enormous, nearly as tall as the lowest pine branches, with shoulders broad enough to carry a full-grown deer. His skin was the deep copper of the Apache, his black hair hanging in two long braids over a chest covered by a fringed buckskin shirt. But it was his absolute stillness that made him seem not quite human, like a spirit from the old stories rather than a man. Lily's hand remained on her rifle, but she didn't raise it. Instead, she straightened her spine and met his gaze across the clearing. "I mean no harm," she called out. "My wagon is broken." The giant made no response, no indication that he'd heard or understood. He simply watched her with eyes as dark and impenetrable as obsidian. Lily considered her options. Jeremiah wouldn't return until tomorrow at the earliest. The broken wagon couldn't be moved. And now the storm had left her supplies vulnerable to further damage. She needed help, even if it came from the legendary cursed giant of the mountains. Decision made, she set down her rifle and took a single step toward him. Then another. The giant didn't move, didn't flee or advance. But as she drew closer, she saw something unexpected in those dark eyes. Not menace or madness, but a wariness that mirrored her own. Lily was halfway across the clearing when the giant turned and walked into the forest without a word. He moved with surprising grace for his size, leaving no more sound than a shadow might. She hesitated, uncertain if his departure was a rejection or an invitation. After a moment's consideration, she returned to the wagon, packed a small bag with essentials, and followed his trail. The path through the pines was barely visible, just a slight depression in the earth and the occasional broken twig. Lily's years on the frontier had taught her to read such signs, though she suspected the giant had deliberately left them for her to follow. A man who moved that quietly wouldn't leave tracks unless he chose to. The forest grew denser as she climbed, the air heavy with the scent of pine and recent rain. Just as she began to wonder if she'd lost the trail, the trees opened into another clearing where a sight stopped her mid-step. A cabin stood before her, but unlike any frontier dwelling she'd encountered. It was larger than most, with a steep-pitched roof and walls of fitted logs that showed remarkable craftsmanship. A covered porch wrapped around one side, furnished with a hand-carved chair sized for its enormous occupant. Most surprising were the windows, actual glass panes that must have been transported at great expense from some distant city. Behind the cabin, neatly tended rows of plants stretched toward a small creek. Some she recognized as vegetables, others appeared to be herbs and flowers. The entire scene spoke of permanence, care, and an unexpected refinement that contradicted everything she'd heard about the cursed giant. The man himself stood by the cabin door, watching her with the same inscrutable expression. Up close, he was even more imposing, nearly 7 feet of solid muscle and bone, with features that might have been chiseled from the surrounding mountains. A long scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, pulling slightly at the corner of his eye. His clothes were clean and well-maintained, another contradiction to the wild savage of Jeremiah's tales. "Your home is beautiful," Lily said, breaking the silence. "Did you build it yourself?" The giant regarded her for a long moment before giving a single, short nod. "My name is Lily Morgan. I'm a healer." She touched her medicine pouch. "My wagon broke down in the clearing below. The man I was traveling with went for help, but he won't return until tomorrow at least. I saw you watching and thought." She trailed off, suddenly uncertain how to explain her impulse to follow him. The giant's gaze traveled over her, assessing. Then he stepped aside, gesturing toward the open door with a massive hand. The interior of the cabin was as surprising as its exterior. A central fireplace of fitted stone dominated one wall, its hearth swept clean. Furniture built to accommodate the giant's frame was arranged with purpose. A table and chair near the fireplace, a bed along the far wall, shelves holding books and carved wooden figures. Everything spoke of careful workmanship and attention to detail. Most surprising were the books. At least 24 volumes lined a shelf near the bed. Lily approached them, curious. Many were in English, well-worn classics of literature and practical guides to agriculture and construction. Several others appeared to be in Spanish and what she guessed might be an Apache dialect. "You read," she said, unable to keep the surprise from her voice as she turned back to the giant, who stood watching her from the doorway. He nodded again, then spoke for the first time, his voice deep and rough from disuse. Some. The single word seemed to require great effort, as though speaking caused him physical discomfort. Or perhaps Lily thought it was simply that he had so little practice at it. Thunder rumbled outside, and the giant moved to close the door against another approaching storm. The cabin immediately felt smaller with him inside, his presence filling the space in a way that should have been frightening. Yet Lily found herself more curious than afraid as she watched him move with careful precision around his home, maintaining a respectful distance from her. He gestured to the chair by the fire, the only one in the cabin, clearly offering it to her. "Thank you," she said, taking the seat. "I don't know your name." The giant hesitated, as if weighing whether to share this piece of himself. Finally, he spoke again, the word emerging slow and deliberate. "Maka." Rain lashed against the windows as the storm intensified, turning the afternoon sky nearly as dark as night. Inside Makara's cabin, a strange silence hung between him and his unexpected visitor. Lily watched as he moved about the space with practiced efficiency, lighting an oil lamp and adding wood to the fire. His enormous hands, which could easily crush stone, handled each object with a delicacy that fascinated her. On a shelf near the fireplace, Lily noticed a collection of small wooden figures. A deer, an eagle, a wolf, and several others, each carved with remarkable detail. She rose from the chair and approached them. "May I?" she asked, gesturing toward the carvings. Maka nodded, watching intently as she lifted the eagle. Its wings were extended in flight, each feather distinct, its eyes seeming to hold a fierce intelligence. "This is beautiful work," she said, genuinely impressed. "Did you make these?" Another nod, accompanied by what might have been a flicker of pride in his dark eyes. "You're an artist," Lily said, carefully returning the eagle to its place. "And a builder, and a gardener from what I saw outside." She studied him with newfound interest. "The stories they tell about you in town, they don't mention any of this." Maka's expression hardened slightly. He turned away, moving to a small table where he began to prepare what appeared to be tea using dried herbs from a wooden box. "What do they say?" His voice was still rough, but the words came a bit more easily now. Lily hesitated, unsure how to politely summarize the superstitious fears that surrounded him. "They say you're cursed, that storms follow you, that animals die when you pass near." A bitter sound escaped him, something between a laugh and a sigh. "People fear what they don't understand." He handed her a steaming cup. "They see the storm, they see me. They think I bring it." The tea was fragrant with mint and something else she couldn't identify. Lily sipped it cautiously, finding it surprisingly pleasant. "This is good. What's in it?" "Mint, chamomile, root of—" He paused, seeming to search for the English word, then switched to Apache before gesturing toward his garden. "Yellow flower, bitter taste. Good for stomach." "Dandelion," Lily suggested, recognizing the description. Maka nodded, looking pleased at the shared understanding. The storm intensified, rain hammering against the roof like an army of tiny fists. A particularly loud crack of thunder made Lily start, nearly spilling her tea. "Storm bad," Maka said, glancing toward the windows. "Stay tonight." He immediately seemed to realize how his words might be interpreted and added, "I sleep there." He pointed to a pile of furs near the fire, far from the bed. Lily weighed her options. The storm showed no signs of abating, and returning to her damaged wagon in this weather would be foolish. Despite the warnings about this man, she'd seen nothing to suggest he meant her harm. If anything, his careful movements and gentle handling of delicate objects spoke of someone acutely aware of his own strength and determined not to misuse it. "Thank you," she decided. "I accept your hospitality." As darkness fell, they shared a simple meal of dried venison, cornbread, and more tea. Maka spoke little, but Lily found the silence between them increasingly comfortable. After dinner, She noticed him wincing slightly as he moved his right shoulder. "You're injured," she observed. Medical instinct overrode any remaining hesitation as she approached him. "May I look at it?" Surprise flickered across his face, followed by wariness, but he gave a cautious nod. Lily directed him to sit on a stool, bringing the lamp closer to examine his shoulder. When he removed his shirt, she saw the problem immediately. A half-healed wound near his shoulder blade, showing signs of infection. "This needs cleaning," she said, reaching for her medicine pouch. "How did it happen?" "Hunting. 2 weeks ago." He spoke in clipped phrases, watching as she prepared a poultice. "Bear? You fought a bear?" Lily raised her eyebrows, impressed despite herself. "Not fought. Surprised each other." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Both ran away. Lily couldn't help but smile in return as she carefully cleaned and dressed the wound. The giant sat perfectly still under her ministrations, only the occasional tightening around his eyes betraying his discomfort. "Why help me?" he asked suddenly. "Most women run, cross themselves." Lily continued her work, considering her answer. "I'm a healer. I don't run from those who need help. Not afraid. I've learned to judge people by their actions, not by stories others tell about them." She secured the bandage and stepped back. "Rest it for a few days. I'll check it again tomorrow." Morning light filtered through the glass windows, waking Lily from the deepest sleep she'd had in months. For a moment, she was disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings until memories of the previous day returned. She sat up in Mako's bed, noting that her host was nowhere to be seen. The fire had been recently tended, and a cup of steaming tea waited on the table beside a plate of dried fruit. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her unexpectedly. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed clean. Lily finished her breakfast and stepped onto the porch, where she found Maka splitting wood with methodical precision. His injured shoulder seemed to pain him little as he worked, though she noticed he favored his left side slightly. "Good morning," she called. He paused, axe held effortlessly in one massive hand, and nodded in greeting. "I should check on my wagon," Lily said. "And my supplies." Maka set down his axe. "I go with you." They walked in companionable silence through the forest. When they reached the clearing, Lily was relieved to find her wagon largely as she'd left it, though now listing even more severely to one side. Maka circled the damaged vehicle, examining the broken wheel and axle with a craftsman's eye. He knelt to inspect the splintered wood more closely. "Can fix," he announced. "Need tools. New wood." "You could repair it?" Lily asked, surprised and relieved. He nodded. 2 days. Maybe 3. Jeremiah, the man I was traveling with, should return today with supplies. Perhaps between the two of you. Maka's expression darkened. "Town men. Not good I meet them." Understanding dawned on Lily. "They fear you." "Yes." A simple acknowledgement of a painful truth. "Last time I helped town people." He trailed off, his gaze distant. "What happened?" Lily asked gently. Maka was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. 3 winters ago. Bad sickness in town. Many die." His voice grew even rougher with the memory. "I know plants that help. Brought medicine to edge of town." His massive hands clenched. "They shot at me. Said I bring sickness." The injustice of it tightened Lily's throat. "I'm sorry." He shrugged his broad shoulders, dismissing the sympathy she knew he must rarely receive. "I wait in forest when your friend comes. After he leaves, I fix wagon." They gathered what supplies they could salvage from the wagon. As they worked, Lily noted how Maka handled her medicines with surprising familiarity. "You know healing plants," she observed. A nod. "My grandmother was medicine woman. Taught me before." He stopped abruptly. "Before what?" "Before they send me away." His tone made it clear the subject was closed. Back at the cabin, Maka led her behind the structure to where his garden grew in neat, well-tended rows. What Lily had taken for a simple vegetable patch revealed itself as an extensive collection of medicinal herbs. Many she recognized, others unfamiliar to her. "This is remarkable," she said, kneeling to examine a plant with delicate purple flowers. "I don't know this one. Good for fever. Boil roots." He pointed to another plant. "This for pain. That for sleep." Lily's medical curiosity was thoroughly engaged now. "Would you show me how you prepare them?" For the first time, she saw genuine pleasure transform Makara's stoic features. He guided her through the garden, naming each plant in Apache first, then attempting the English name if he knew it. When they reached a plant with star-shaped white flowers, he carefully pinched off a leaf and handed it to her. "Smell," he instructed. The aroma was sweet and complex, unlike anything in her pharmacopoeia. "What is it used for?" "Heart pain." He tapped his chest, then moved his hand to his temple. "Sad thoughts." "Melancholy," Lily suggested, fascinated. "How is it prepared?" They spent the morning in the garden, Lily taking notes in a small journal she carried, drawing sketches of unfamiliar plants and recording Makara's instructions. His knowledge was extensive and precise, combining traditional Apache wisdom with practical experience. By midday, Lily realized with surprise that Jeremiah would likely return soon, and that she felt a strange reluctance at the prospect. Here, among the healing plants with this gentle giant, she had discovered something unexpected, a kindred spirit whose passion for healing matched her own. "I could learn much from you," she said as they returned to the cabin. "Knowledge that might help many people." Maka considered her words, wariness and hope warring in his expression. "Town people not want Apache medicine." "Some might not," Lily acknowledged. "But a good healer uses whatever works, regardless of where it comes from." She smiled at him. "And I've never cared much for what others think I should or shouldn't do." The sound of approaching horses brought their conversation to an abrupt halt. Maka tensed, head turning toward the trail with the alertness of a wild animal sensing danger. "Your friend returns," he said quietly. "I go now." Before Lily could respond, he had slipped into the forest with that same unnatural silence, leaving her alone in the garden. Moments later, Jeremiah appeared at the edge of the clearing, leading a horse pulling a cart laden with supplies. Another man rode beside him, younger, with a rifle resting casually across his saddle. "Mrs. Morgan," Jeremiah called, relief evident in his voice. "Thank the Lord you're safe. When we found the wagon empty, I feared the worst." Lily approached them, conscious of Maka watching unseen from the trees. "As you can see, I'm perfectly well, Mr. Halloway." "Whose place is this?" the younger man asked, eyeing the cabin suspiciously. "A friend," Lily replied simply. "He offered shelter during the storm." Jeremiah's eyes narrowed. "There aren't any settlers in these parts, ma'am. Only—" He broke off, realization dawning on his face. "Sweet Jesus, you've been staying with that Apache devil." "I've been staying with a man named Maka who has shown me nothing but kindness and hospitality," Lily corrected firmly. "And he's offered to help repair our wagon." The younger man spat on the ground. "We don't need no Indian help. That's why I brought Ben here." He gestured to the tools in the cart. "Best wheelwright in Copper Creek." Lily recognized the stubborn set of both men's jaws and decided against arguing further. "Very well. Shall we return to the wagon?" Then, the repairs took the remainder of the day, with Ben working efficiently despite his frequent nervous glances toward the forest. Lily helped where she could, but found herself distracted, wondering where Maka had gone and if he would return. As dusk approached, Ben pronounced the wagon sound enough for travel. "We'll head to town first thing tomorrow," Jeremiah announced. "Too late to start now with night coming on." They made camp beside the repaired wagon, and though the men invited Lily to join them, She insisted on returning to the cabin to collect her things. Alone in Makro's home, she felt an unexpected sense of loss at the thought of leaving. She gathered her belongings slowly, reluctant to complete the task. A soft sound at the door made her turn. Maka stood in the doorway, watching her with an unreadable expression. "You go tomorrow," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Lily confirmed. "They've repaired the wagon." He nodded, accepting this inevitable outcome. He crossed to a small wooden chest near his bed and opened it, removing something that he held closed in his massive hand. "Your shoulder," Lily said, remembering. "I should check it before I leave." Maka sat obediently on the stool while she unwrapped yesterday's bandage. The wound looked better, the angry redness receding. As she worked, her fingers brushed against something hanging around his neck, a leather cord that had been hidden beneath his shirt. "What's this?" she asked. After a moment's hesitation, Maka pulled the cord over his head and held it out to her. Suspended from the leather was a circular pendant made of polished stone, etched with symbols she didn't recognize and decorated with intricate beadwork. "Family," he said simply. "Mother gave before she died." Lily accepted the necklace carefully, sensing its importance. "It's beautiful. What do the symbols mean?" "Protection. Belonging." His voice grew softer. "Connection to ancestors." "You must miss your family," Lily said gently, returning the precious object. Instead of replacing it around his neck, Maka continued to hold the necklace, his thumb moving over the stone surface in a habitual gesture. "They sent me away when I was boy," he said, the words emerging with difficulty. "Too big, too strange. Elders said spirits marked me." His expression darkened with old pain. "Only grandmother wanted me, taught me plants, healing. After she died, no place for me." The simple statement contained a lifetime of rejection that made Lily's heart ache. "So you came here, built this place." He nodded. "My own place. No one to fear me here. Until people from town started spreading stories." "People need something to fear," he said with unexpected wisdom. "Make them feel safer when they name it." Lily finished rebandaging his shoulder, her touch lingering a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you for showing me your garden today. Your knowledge is remarkable." Maka looked down at the necklace in his hand, then slowly extended it toward her. "For you, to remember." Lily was stunned by the offer. "Maka, I couldn't possibly. This is your family connection." "You not afraid," he said simply. "You see me, not monster." The profound gratitude in those few words made Lily realize how deeply her simple acceptance had affected him. Still, she gently closed his fingers back around the necklace. "Keep it," she said softly. "But I would like to return someday, if I may. There's so much more I could learn from you." Something like hope flickered in his dark eyes. "You would come back?" "Yes," Lily promised. "I would come back." Morning brought the inevitable departure. Lily found herself inventing reasons to delay, checking her supplies one last time, making certain the wagon repairs would hold, asking Jeremiah detailed questions about the trail ahead. All the while, she was acutely aware of Maka watching from the edge of the forest, visible to her but hidden from the men. "We really should get going, Mrs. Morgan," Jeremiah finally said, his impatience thinly veiled. "It's a fair distance to Copper Creek, and I'd like to arrive before dark." "Of course," Lily agreed, climbing reluctantly onto the wagon seat. As they pulled away, she looked back toward the trees, raising her hand in a small farewell gesture. A slight movement among the pines was the only acknowledgement. The journey passed in uncomfortable silence. Jeremiah clearly had questions about her time with the Apache devil, but Lily's curt responses to his initial probing discouraged further inquiry. Her thoughts remained with the gentle giant and his isolated cabin, his extensive knowledge of healing plants, and the profound loneliness she had glimpsed beneath his stoic exterior. By mid-afternoon, the wagon crested a hill revealing Copper Creek below, a typical frontier town with a main street lined by false-fronted buildings, surrounded by scattered homesteads. It should have represented a return to civilization, to comfort and society. Instead, Lily felt a strange sense of loss. "You can let me off at the boarding house," she told Jeremiah. "I'll inquire about rooms there." Mrs. Abernathy's boarding house was clean and respectable, if sparsely furnished. The proprietress, a sharp-eyed widow in her 60s, showed Lily to a small room at the back of the house. "Traveling alone, are you?" Mrs. Abernathy asked, not bothering to disguise her curiosity. "Yes," Lily replied, setting down her bags. "I'm a healer. I go where I'm needed." "A healer, you say? We lost our doctor last winter. Folks have been making do with old Mrs. Wilkins and her remedies, but she's nearly blind now." Lily recognized an opportunity. "I plan to stay a while. If anyone needs my services, I'm happy to help." Alone in her room, Lily unpacked her belongings, carefully arranging her medicines on the small dresser. At the bottom of her bag, she found her journal, leather-bound and well-worn from years of use. She sat on the narrow bed and opened it to her most recent entries, pages filled with sketches of plants from Maka's garden and notes on their uses. The knowledge recorded there was valuable, unique combinations of traditional Apache medicine and Maka's own discoveries through years of isolation and experimentation. Lily traced her finger over a drawing of the star-flowered plant he had shown her, remembering his words, "For heart pain, sad thoughts." She turned to a blank page and began to write, not medical notes this time, but a full account of her encounter with Maka. She described his cabin, his garden, his carved figures, all the evidence of a sensitive, intelligent man so at odds with the cursed giant of local legend. Writing it down felt important somehow, as if committing his true nature to paper might counteract the years of fearful stories. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Mrs. Abernathy stood in the hallway, a young woman hovering anxiously behind her. "Mrs. Morgan, this is Jenny Blackwell. Her little boy's running a terrible fever. Their farm's just outside town. She wondered if you might come." Within minutes, Lily had gathered her medicine pouch and was following Jenny to a small farmhouse where a 5-year-old boy lay flushed with fever, his breathing labored. Lily examined him carefully, recognizing the symptoms of lung inflammation. From her pouch, she produced several packets of herbs, including one containing the root Maka had shown her specifically for childhood fevers. She prepared a tea with precise measurements, just as he had demonstrated. "This will help bring down the fever," she told the worried mother. "And this salve should ease his breathing when rubbed on his chest." By evening, the boy's fever had broken. His grateful parents insisted Lily stay for supper, during which word of the miracle healer spread. By the time she returned to the boarding house, 3 more people were waiting to consult her about ailments. In the privacy of her room that night, Lily returned to her journal, adding notes about how she had combined her traditional treatments with Maka's methods. The results had been remarkably effective. She found herself sketching his face from memory, the strong lines of his jaw, the scar that pulled at his eye, the unexpected gentleness in his expression when he spoke of healing plants. Beneath the drawing, she wrote, "Knowledge should not be feared because of its source. Healing is healing, regardless of who provides it." Her promise to return to his cabin wasn't merely courtesy. There was so much more she could learn from him, knowledge that could help many people if they could overcome their prejudice. And perhaps, she admitted to herself, there were other reasons she wished to see him again. Reasons that had little to do with medicine and much to do with the connection she'd felt with a fellow outsider who understood what it meant to walk a solitary path. 3 weeks passed quickly in Copper Creek. Lily's reputation as a skilled healer spread through the small community, bringing a steady stream of patients to her door. She established a makeshift clinic in a corner of Mrs. Abernathy's parlor, treating everything from minor injuries to chronic ailments. Many of her treatments incorporated the knowledge she had gained from Maka, though she was careful not to mention him as their source. Despite her success, Lily found her thoughts returning often to the gentle giant and his mountain cabin. The effectiveness of his remedies only increased her desire to learn more from him. When her supply of the star-flowered plant, which she had successfully used to treat a woman suffering from melancholy, began to run low, she decided it was time to make good on her promise to return. "I need to gather more herbs," she told Mrs. Abernathy one morning. "I'll be gone for a few days." The older woman raised an eyebrow. "The woods around here have plenty of medicinals. No need to go far. What I need grows in the foothills," Lily replied, packing her satchel with provisions. "There are rare plants there that I can't find elsewhere." She hired a local boy to drive her to within a mile of Mako's clearing, instructing him to return in 3 days. As his wagon disappeared down the trail, Lily felt a strange mixture of anticipation and nervousness. Would Mako welcome her return, or had he already forgotten their brief connection? The forest seemed to recognize her, the path easier to follow than she remembered. When she emerged into the clearing, the cabin stood just as before, smoke rising gently from the chimney. Before she could approach, Maka appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from wariness to recognition to something that might have been pleasure. "You came back," he said, the simple statement filled with quiet wonder. Lily smiled. "I promised I would." That evening, they sat by the fire as Lily told him about her work in Copper Creek. Maka listened intently, asking occasional questions about how she had prepared his remedies and what results they had produced. "Your knowledge has helped many people," she told him, "though I haven't mentioned where I learned these treatments." Maka nodded, understanding the necessity of her discretion. "Town people not ready." "Not yet," Lily agreed, "but perhaps someday." As the fire burned low, Maka rose and retrieved something from the wooden chest near his bed. A long eagle feather, its shaft decorated with intricate beadwork. "Gift," he said, offering it to her. "From only friend before you." Lily accepted the feather carefully. "Who gave it to you?" "Old man. Medicine man from my tribe." Mako's voice softened with remembrance. "When others feared me, he said I had special purpose. Said my size was gift from spirits, not curse." He touched the feather gently. "When he died, gave me this. Said eagle sees far, understands what others cannot." "He sounds like a wise man," Lily said, deeply moved by the story and the significance of the gift Maka now shared with her. "Was father to me when my father sent me away." Pain flickered across his features. "Taught me not to hate those who feared me." "That's a difficult lesson," Lily observed. "I'm not sure I could be so forgiving." "Not forgiveness," Maka corrected. "Understanding. Fear is like sickness. People not choose it." His insight surprised her, revealing a depth of thought and compassion she had glimpsed but not fully appreciated before. "Is why I stay," he continued. "Build home. Grow plants. Not hide in mountains like animal." Pride straightened his massive shoulders. "Live as man, even if alone." Lily studied him in the firelight, this extraordinary person who had every reason to despise humanity yet chose solitude over bitterness. "You're not alone now," she said softly. Something shifted in Mako's dark eyes, a vulnerability quickly concealed. "You go back soon, to help people." "Yes," she admitted, "but I'll return again, if you're willing to teach me more." "Why?" The question was direct, his gaze searching her face for truth. Lily considered her answer carefully. "Because your knowledge is valuable. Because it should be preserved and shared." She paused, then added with equal honesty, "And because I've never met anyone quite like you, Maka." The giant absorbed her words, his expression thoughtful. Outside, an owl called in the darkness, its voice echoing through the forest. Maka tilted his head, listening. "Owl says change comes," he murmured. "Big change. Is that good or bad?" Lily asked. Maka shrugged his massive shoulders. "Owl not say. Just that world shifts. like earth in spring. His eyes met hers. For me, good change already came. You not afraid. The simple statement contained such genuine gratitude that Lily felt humbled. To him, her basic human decency was a precious gift because he had known so little of it. People fear what they don't understand, she said, echoing his earlier words. But fear can be overcome with knowledge, with truth. The next morning, Lily joined Maka in his garden, her journal open as she documented the growth patterns of his medicinal plants. He moved through the rows with unexpected grace, his massive hands gentle as they tended delicate seedlings. They worked in companionable silence, broken occasionally by Maka naming a plant or explaining its uses. By midday, clouds gathered on the horizon, promising another mountain storm. They retreated to the cabin just as the first drops fell. Always rain when you come, Maka observed, setting a kettle to boil for tea. Lily smiled, settling into the chair by the fire. Perhaps I'm the cursed one, not you. The joke startled a short, rusty laugh from him, a sound she suspected was rarely heard within these walls. The simple pleasure of making this solemn giant laugh warmed her more than the crackling fire. As the rain intensified, Lily noticed something she had overlooked during her previous stay. A cloth-covered frame leaning against the wall in a shadowed corner. "What's that?" she asked, gesturing toward it. Maka followed her gaze, his expression turning guarded. Nothing important. His evident discomfort only heightened her curiosity. "May I see it?" After a moment's hesitation, he crossed to the corner and carefully removed the cloth, revealing a wooden frame stretched with canvas. Lily gasped softly as she beheld the painting. A sunset over the mountains rendered in vibrant colors that seemed to glow with inner light. The sky burned with oranges and purples, reflected in a mountain lake where a lone eagle soared above its mirrored image. "Maka," she breathed, "this is extraordinary." He stood awkwardly beside the painting, embarrassment and pride warring in his expression. "Old man, medicine man, gave paints. Said make beauty to fight loneliness." Lily approached the canvas, drawn by the raw emotion captured in each brushstroke. "Where did you learn to paint like this?" "No learn. Just." He gestured vaguely toward his heart. "See inside, then make outside." "It's a gift," Lily said with genuine admiration. "A rare one." Maka replaced the cloth over the painting with the same care. He showed his herbs and carvings. "Not useful. Not like healing." "Beauty heals in its own way," Lily countered. "It reminds us there's more to life than survival." He considered this, then nodded slowly. "Why I make? Forget alone when I paint." The simple admission revealed more of his isolation than any complaint could have. Lily thought of her own solitary journeys, the loneliness of being neither fully accepted by white society nor truly belonging to the native communities whose knowledge she sought. Yet her solitude was chosen, a condition of her calling. Maka's was imposed by fear and superstition. "Do you have others?" she asked. "Other paintings?" He hesitated, then nodded. From beneath his bed, he withdrew a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were several smaller canvases, landscapes, wildlife, and a striking portrait of an elderly native man with kind eyes and a weathered face. "The medicine man?" Lily guessed. "Yes, painted from memory after he died." Maka's finger traced the outline of the old man's face with reverence. "Only one who saw me as blessing, not curse." "Until now," Lily said softly. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition of kindred spirits divided by circumstance but united by understanding. The moment was broken by distant voices, men calling to one another through the forest. Maka tensed, his head turning toward the sound like a wolf scenting danger. "Town men," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Hunting." Lily moved to the window, peering through the rain. "They're far off yet, probably seeking shelter from the storm." "Not safe," Maka insisted, gathering her journal and satchel. If find you here. He didn't need to finish the thought. Discovery would mean danger, for him certainly, and possibly for her as well. A white woman alone in an Indian's cabin would spark rumors and suspicions that could destroy the trust she had built in Copper Creek. There's a place, Maka said, decision made. Cave behind waterfall. Hunters never go there. Safe until they pass. They slipped out the back of the cabin and into the forest, Maka leading the way through the downpour with unerring confidence. Despite his size, he moved through the underbrush with barely a sound, occasionally reaching back to help Lily over fallen logs or slippery stones. The voices grew fainter behind them as they climbed higher into the mountains. Lily's skirts were soon soaked and heavy, but she pressed on, trusting Makara's guidance. Finally, they reached a narrow path that wound behind a curtain of falling water into a shallow cave. Inside, the roar of the waterfall created a cocoon of sound that was somehow both thunderous and peaceful. The cave was dry and surprisingly warm, with evidence of previous use. A small fire pit, a stack of wood, and furs laid out for sitting. "Your sanctuary," Lily observed, understanding dawning. Maka nodded, busying himself with starting a small fire. "Come here when need, when too alone." The simple phrase conveyed volumes about the depth of his isolation, that loneliness itself could become a physical ache requiring retreat even from his solitary cabin. As the fire cast dancing shadows on the cave walls, Lily removed her sodden shawl and spread it near the flames to dry. Maka sat cross-legged on the furs, his massive frame somehow making the cave seem smaller yet more secure. "How long have you had this place?" she asked, settling beside him. "Many winters." His voice echoed softly against the stone. "Found when first came to mountains. Before built cabin." "It's beautiful," Lily said, listening to the constant symphony of the waterfall. "Peaceful." Maka reached into a small niche in the rock wall and withdrew a leather pouch. From it, he poured several smooth, flat stones into his palm, each polished by water and time into perfect ovals. Some were dark as night, others striped with bands of color or flecked with glittering minerals. "River stones," he explained, offering one to Lily. "Each has spirit, voice." She accepted the stone, cool, heavy, and somehow comforting in her hand. Its surface was midnight black with a single stripe of white quartz running through its center. "What does this one say?" she asked. Maka studied it seriously. "Path through darkness. Finding way when lost." He selected another stone from his collection, reddish-brown with golden flecks. "This one speaks of courage. Standing firm." "You understand their language," Lily observed, not questioning the belief but accepting it as part of his world. "Stones older than people. Wiser." He arranged several in a pattern before him. "When confused, stones help think. Show truths hidden inside." "Like reading tea leaves?" Lily suggested. Maka considered this. "Maybe, but not telling future. Telling now. What already know but forget." The sophisticated concept surprised her, revealing yet again the depth of thought behind his simple phrases. "And what do they tell you now?" she asked gently. His dark eyes met hers, then returned to the stones. "Change comes. Old life ending. Are you afraid?" "Yes." The honesty was disarming. "But stones also say new path possible." He touched the black and white stone in her palm. "Not all darkness." Outside, the rain began to slacken, the constant drumming on the forest canopy softening to intermittent patters. Maka tilted his head, listening for human sounds beyond the waterfall. "Hunters gone," he said after a moment. "Safe now." Yet neither made a move to leave the sanctuary. The intimacy of the small cave, cut off from the world by the curtain of water, created a space where the barriers between them, cultural, social, personal, seemed thinner. "Why do people fear you, Maka?" Lily asked, the question that had lingered in her mind since their first meeting. I mean beyond your size. Why the stories about curses and death? He was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and pained. First winter here, bad sickness came to town. Like I told before, many died. His hands closed into fists on his knees. Same time drought, crops failed, cattle died. His eyes reflected the firelight as he looked up at her. People need reason for bad things. Easy to blame what already fear. The outsider, Lily said softly. The one who's different. He nodded. First just avoid. Then stories grow. Each bad thing. Storm, sickness, lost child. Blame on me. A deep sadness entered his voice. After time, believe own stories. See me, see only curse. That's why you live alone? Because they made you believe you bring misfortune? No. His answer was firm. Live alone because safer for me. Town men came once with guns. Wanted to drive away curse. He touched a long-healed scar on his arm. Learned stay away better. The simple recounting of such injustice made Lily's throat tighten with anger. I'm so sorry, Maka. He shrugged his massive shoulders. Long time ago. Make peace. How? How do you forgive such cruelty? Not about forgive, he said, echoing their earlier conversation. About understand. Fear powerful. Make good people do bad things. Lily thought of her own experiences, the suspicion she'd faced as a female healer, the hostility when she incorporated native remedies into her practice. But those challenges paled compared to Maka's systematic rejection. You're a remarkable man, she said quietly. Most would have become what others believed them to be. Maka looked down at the river stones, rearranging them with a gentle finger. Sometimes almost did, when loneliness too heavy. He picked up the black and white stone from her palm and placed it in the center of his pattern. Then remember old man's words. Heart makes man, not what others see. In the silence that followed, Lily realized something had shifted between them. A deepening of trust, a recognition that transcended their differences. Watching his powerful hands arrange the delicate stones with such care, she saw not the feared giant of legend but a man of profound gentleness and wisdom. We should return, Maka said eventually, though his tone suggested reluctance. Before dark. Lily nodded, but as they gathered their things, she picked up the black and white stone. May I keep this? She asked. As a reminder? Maka's eyes softened. Already yours, he said simply. Stone chose you. The return journey to Maka's cabin was unhurried, both of them reluctant to break the companionable silence that had grown between them. As they walked, Lily found herself increasingly aware of him, not as the feared giant of legend, but as a man. She noticed the grace of his movements, the intelligence in his dark eyes, the care he took to match his long strides to her shorter ones. When they reached the edge of the clearing, Maka stopped abruptly, raising one hand in warning. His entire body tensed, head tilted as he listened intently. Someone at cabin, he whispered, pulling Lily deeper into the cover of the trees. Through the branches, she could make out 3 horses tethered outside the cabin and several men moving around the clearing. Even from this distance, she recognized Jeremiah Halloway among them. It's the boy, she realized aloud. The one I hired to pick me up tomorrow. He must have told them where he left me. They look for you, Maka said, his expression grave. Think I hurt you. One of the men emerged from the cabin holding something aloft, Lily's shawl, which she had forgotten in their hasty departure. Evidence, the man shouted. The Indians taken her. Damn, Lily muttered. I need to go to them before this gets worse. Maka caught her arm, his touch surprisingly gentle despite his strength. Not safe. Men angry. They're angry because they're worried about me, she explained. If they see I'm well, they'll leave peacefully. The doubt in his eyes spoke volumes about his past experiences with angry townsmen, but he released her arm. I stay close, hidden. Lily squared her shoulders and stepped into the clearing. Gentlemen, she called, there's no need for alarm. I'm perfectly fine. All three men whirled toward her voice, hands instinctively dropping to their weapons. Recognition and relief washed over Jeremiah's face, but the other two men remained tense, eyes scanning the forest edge. Mrs. Morgan, Jeremiah exclaimed. Thank the Lord. When Billy said he'd left you near the Indians' territory, we feared the worst. As you can see, I'm unharmed, Lily replied calmly. I've been gathering medicinal plants in the foothills. The tallest of the three men stepped forward, handsome in a conventional way, with a neatly trimmed beard and expensive clothing that marked him as someone of importance in Copper Creek. Lily, he said, his voice carrying the refined accent of the East Coast. You've led us on quite a chase. The familiar address startled her, as did the sense of ownership in his tone. Looking more closely, she felt a shock of recognition. Edward? Edward Bancroft. The very same. He smiled, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. Your father will be relieved to know you're safe. We've been searching for months. Confusion and alarm flared within her. My father? That's impossible. My father died 5 years ago. A convenient story, I'm sure, Edward replied smoothly. Just as I'm sure you had your reasons for abandoning our engagement and disappearing from Boston. Lily felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. I've never been engaged to you. I've never even lived in Boston. Edward turned to his companions with a sad smile. You see how it is. The poor woman is confused. The shock of her mother's death affected her mind. She fled before the wedding, and her father has been beside himself with worry. This is absurd, Lily protested, anger building. My name is Lily Morgan. I was married to Thomas Morgan, a schoolteacher from St. Louis. He died of consumption 3 years ago. Her maiden name was Lily Harrington, Edward continued as if she hadn't spoken. We were to be married last spring. Her father is Judge William Harrington of Boston. Jeremiah looked between them, confusion evident on his weathered face. Mrs. Morgan has been working as a healer in Copper Creek for near a month now. Saved my sister's boy from fever. Yes, she always had a knack for herb lore, Edward agreed smoothly. A hobby her father indulged perhaps too freely. But now it's time to come home, Lily. I am not going anywhere with you, Lily stated firmly, her hand moving to the silver locket at her throat, the one containing a miniature portrait of Thomas. I don't know what game you're playing, Mr. Bancroft, but I am Lily Morgan, widow of Thomas Morgan. I have never been to Boston, and I am certainly not engaged to you. Edward's pleasant facade slipped slightly, a harder expression showing through. The delusion persists, I see. He gestured to the third man who stepped forward with rope. We may need to restrain her for her own safety during the journey. Lily backed away, her heart pounding. Don't you dare touch me. It's for your own good, my dear, Edward insisted, advancing toward her. Your father has engaged the finest doctors to treat your condition. The third man lunged suddenly, catching Lily's wrist in a painful grip. She twisted, trying to break free, but he was too strong. Let her go. The deep voice cut through the clearing like thunder. All heads turned to see Maka emerging from the forest, his massive frame seeming even larger with anger. He carried no weapon, but the sheer power of his presence caused the man holding Lily to loosen his grip in shock. Edward recovered first, drawing a pistol from inside his coat. So this is where you've been hiding? With a savage? Maka, stay back, Lily warned, but he continued forward, placing himself between her and the three men. She not want go, he said simply. She stays. My God, Edward breathed, genuine fear replacing his arrogance as he took in Maka's full size. It's true. There really is a giant Apache in these mountains. Jeremiah's hand hovered near his rifle. Mrs. Morgan, step away from him. He's dangerous. The only danger here, Lily countered, moving to stand beside Maka, is from those who would abduct a woman against her will. She clutched her locket tightly. This contains a portrait of my husband, Thomas. I have never met this man Edward Bancroft before today, and I have never been to Boston. Edward's eyes narrowed at the locket clutched in Lily's hand. A trinket proves nothing. You've been living in some fantasy world, Lily, but it's time to come home. I don't know you, Lily insisted, her voice steady despite her racing heart. And I'm not going anywhere. The standoff stretched, tension thickening the air. Maka remained a solid presence beside her, silent but watchful. Edward's pistol remained trained on him, the barrel looking absurdly small against the giant's chest. Jeremiah, Lily appealed to the traitor. You've known me for weeks. Have I ever seemed confused or delusional to you? Jeremiah shifted uncomfortably. Can't say you have, Mrs. Morgan. You've been clear-headed enough treating the townsfolk. This charade has gone on long enough, Edward snapped, his refined veneer cracking. Judge Harrington is paying me handsomely to bring you back, and that's exactly what I intend to do. The mention of payment revealed his true motivation, and Lily felt a chill of understanding. You're a bounty hunter. I prefer retrieval specialist, Edward corrected with a cold smile. Specializing in runaway wives and daughters. You're hardly my first reluctant charge, though you've led me on the longest chase. He gestured to his companion. Secure her. We're leaving. The man moved forward, rope still in hand. Maka stepped directly into his path, a mountain made flesh. No, Edward's patience snapped. Get out of the way, savage, or I'll put a bullet in you. Maka, please, Lily whispered urgently. Don't risk yourself for me. But the giant stood immovable, his dark eyes fixed on Edward. She stays. The tension broke with the crack of a gunshot. Lily screamed as Maka staggered, clutching his side where blood bloomed through his buckskin shirt. Despite the wound, he remained standing, his expression more surprised than pained. Next one goes through your heart, Edward warned, cocking the pistol again. Move aside. Instead, Maka lunged forward with unexpected speed. Edward fired again but missed as the giant's massive hand closed around the pistol, wrenching it away with such force that Edward cried out in pain as his finger caught in the trigger guard. Jeremiah raised his rifle, but hesitated, unwilling to shoot a man already wounded. His companion showed no such restraint, drawing a knife and slashing at Maka's arm. The blade opened a gash, but Maka seemed not to notice as he lifted Edward bodily and threw him against a tree. The bounty hunter hit hard and slumped to the ground, dazed but conscious. Seeing their advantage lost, Jeremiah made a decision. This has gone too far, he said, lowering his rifle. Mrs. Morgan clearly ain't coming willingly, and I ain't party to forcing no woman. You're making a mistake, Edward gasped, struggling to his feet. The reward ain't worth killing over, Jeremiah finished firmly. We're leaving. Now. Edward looked ready to argue but thought better of it when Maka took a menacing step forward, blood still seeping from his wounds. This isn't over, he warned Lily. I'll return with more men. Then I suggest you explain to them that you're attempting to abduct a widow who has never set foot in Boston, Lily replied coldly. I'm sure the sheriff will be interested in your specialty. The three men retreated, Edward leaning heavily on his companion. Only when the sound of hoofbeats faded did Maka finally allow himself to sag against the cabin wall, his face pale beneath his copper skin. Inside, Lily commanded, her healer's instincts taking over. Now, once in the cabin, she directed him to lie on the bed while she examined his wounds. The bullet had grazed his side, tearing flesh but missing vital organs. The knife wound on his arm was deeper but had missed major vessels. You need stitches, she told him, opening her medicine pouch. And something for the pain. No pain medicine, Maka said, his voice tight. Need clear head. They come back. Not tonight, Lily assured him, though she shared his concern. We have time to treat you properly. Maka gestured toward a small wooden chest decorated with tribal symbols. There. Medicine bundle. Lily retrieved it, surprised by its weight. Inside lay an assortment of carefully wrapped packets. Herbs, powders, and instruments far older than her own medical tools. A medicine bundle was a sacred thing in many tribes, often passed down through generations of healers. Grandmothers, Maka explained as she examined the contents. Last thing she gave me. Reverently, Lily selected several items. A poultice of crushed herbs that smelled of sage and pine, a sinew thread finer than any she'd seen, and a salve of rendered animal fat mixed with medicinal plants. Working together, they cleaned and treated his wounds. Maka directed her to specific remedies in the bundle, combining his grandmother's traditional medicine with Lily's surgical skills. Despite the pain, he remained stoic, only the occasional tightening around his eyes betraying his discomfort as she stitched the deeper wounds. Why you help me? He asked suddenly. Could go with them. Safer. Lily tied off the final stitch before answering. First, because I'm not who they claim I am. I've never seen that man before in my life. She began applying the healing salve to his injuries. And second, because you stood between me and danger without hesitation. How could I do any less for you? Maka studied her face, searching for truth. Edward man not stop. Come back with more guns. I know, Lily admitted, securing the bandage around his ribs. Which means we need to decide what to do next. We. The question contained equal parts hope and disbelief. Yes, we, Lily confirmed, her hand resting lightly on his arm. I'm not leaving you wounded, and I'm certainly not surrendering to a bounty hunter's false claims. She smiled grimly. It seems our paths are now bound together, whether we planned it or not. Dawn found them preparing for the inevitable. Maka moved stiffly but purposefully around the cabin, gathering essential supplies while Lily sorted through her medicines, selecting those they couldn't leave behind. How far can you travel with those wounds? She asked, watching him wince as he reached for a high shelf. Far enough, he replied, his voice determined though strained. Edward man not lie. We'll bring more men. But where will we go? Lily secured her medicine pouch at her hip. Copper Creek is too close. They'll look for me there first. Maka paused in his preparations, seeming to consider something of great importance. Finally, he retrieved a small oilskin packet from beneath a loose floorboard near the hearth. His movements were reverent as he unwrapped it, revealing a piece of deerskin marked with faded symbols and lines. A map. Sacred lands, he explained, spreading it carefully on the table. Where old ones lived long ago. Hidden valley beyond mountains. Lily studied the crude map, recognizing the mountain range and the river that flowed past Copper Creek. Beyond them lay uncharted territory, at least to white settlers. The path Maka traced with his finger led through high passes and deep canyons to a valley marked with symbols she couldn't decipher. What do these mean? She asked, pointing to the markings. Old village. People gone now. A shadow crossed his face. Sickness came many winters ago. Few survived. Your people. He nodded. Some of old ones went there, after white sickness, built new life away from soldiers, settlers. And they're still there? These survivors? Maka shook his head. No. Last one died when I was boy, before I sent away. His finger traced the valley's outline. But place still sacred, protected by spirits. White men fear go there. And you think we'd be safe? For time, yes. He rolled the map carefully. Good water, cave for shelter, game for food. Lily felt a flutter of uncertainty. Life in the wilderness, far from civilization, was a daunting prospect even for someone accustomed to frontier travel. Yet the alternative, being dragged to Boston by a bounty hunter for reasons she couldn't fathom, was unthinkable. How long would it take to reach this valley? 3 days. Maybe 4 with. He gestured to his wounded side. Need cross high places. Difficult path. Practical concern occurred to her. What about winter? It can't be far off now. Valley protected from worst snow. South facing. He hesitated, then added, not forever. Just until safe return. The implication was clear. This was temporary refuge, not a permanent solution. Still, the decision weighed heavily. To follow Maka meant leaving behind everything familiar, embracing a life even more isolated than her years of frontier travel. I need to think, she said, stepping outside onto the porch. The morning air was cool and crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the distant promise of snow. From here, she could see the town of Copper Creek, tiny and vulnerable in the valley below. A thin spiral of smoke rose from Mrs. Abernathy's chimney, where patients might already be gathering, waiting for the healer who wouldn't return. Behind her, the cabin door opened as Maka joined her, keeping a respectful distance. You afraid? He observed quietly. Yes, Lily admitted. Not of you or even of the wilderness, but of disappearing, of leaving behind the life I've built. Understand. His voice carried a depth of empathy that needed no elaboration. How well he would understand the fear of leaving one's known world. Do I have a choice? She asked, more to herself than to him. Always choice. Maka's certainty was absolute. Can go back. Face Edward man. Maybe win. And if I lose? If he drags me to Boston to meet a man who claims to be my father, but whom I've never seen? She shook her head. What happens to me then? Not know. He touched his bandaged side gingerly. But not leave you alone. Come to town if needed. The offer stunned her, that he would risk returning to a place where he was feared and hated, just to support her. The depth of loyalty in such a simple statement moved her profoundly. They would kill you, she said softly. Maybe. He shrugged his massive shoulders. But not let you face alone. Lily turned to study him fully. This extraordinary man who had endured rejection and isolation, yet maintained such gentleness. Who carved beautiful things and painted sunset skies. Who knew the language of stones and plants. Who would risk his life to protect someone who had shown him basic human kindness. And she knew her decision was already made. We'll go to the sacred valley, she said. Together. Relief and something deeper softened his features. He nodded once, accepting her choice with characteristic quietude. They spent the remainder of the morning preparing, packing only what they could carry, preserving what food wouldn't keep, securing the cabin as though they might someday return. Maka carefully wrapped his paintings and placed them in a high storage shelf, protected from the elements. We'll miss them, he said, touching the wrapped canvas of his sunset. But make new ones. Yes, Lily agreed, surprising herself with her certainty. You will. By midday they were ready. Maka shouldered the heavier pack despite his injuries, leaving Lily with her medicines and lighter provisions. At the edge of the clearing, he paused for one last look at the home he had built with his own hands, the physical manifestation of his determination to live as a man, not a feared outsider. Goodbye, old life, he said simply. As if in answer, dust rose on the distant trail, riders approaching from the direction of Copper Creek. Into the trees, Maka urged, but Lily hesitated. How many riders do you see? She asked, straining to count the distant figures. 5, maybe 6. His expression darkened. Edward man works fast. Lily made a swift decision. We can't outrun them, not with your injuries. And they'll just track us if we flee. She squared her shoulders. We need to stand our ground. Alarm flashed across Maka's face. Too dangerous. They have guns. And we have the truth, Lily countered. though she understood the naivety of her statement. Truth rarely prevailed against fear and firearms. Maka disappeared briefly into the cabin, returning with something wrapped in soft leather. He unwrapped it to reveal a knife with a bone handle, its blade longer and differently shaped than any Lily had seen, curved slightly with strange markings etched into the metal. "Father's knife," he explained, testing its edge with his thumb. "Given when born. Only thing he not take back when sent me away." The weapon looked ancient and valuable, clearly an heirloom of significance. "Have you ever used it?" Lily asked. Maka shook his head. "Not for fighting. Only hunting, carving." He tucked it into his belt. "Hope not used today." The riders drew closer, and Lily could now make out familiar faces among them. Jeremiah, the shopkeeper from town, and Sheriff Davis. Edward rode at the front, his expression grimly triumphant as he spotted them standing before the cabin. "There she is," he called to the others. "And the savage is holding her. Captive, just as I said." The men reined in their horses at the edge of the clearing, hands resting on weapons. Sheriff Davis stepped forward, his weathered face troubled. "Mrs. Morgan," he called, "are you being held against your will?" Before Lily could answer, Edward cut in. "She's not Mrs. Morgan. She's Lily Harrington of Boston, daughter of Judge William Harrington. She's been missing for over a year, and her father has authorized me to bring her home." "That's not true," Lily called back firmly. "Sheriff, you've known me for weeks. Have I seemed like a woman running from something? Have I acted deranged or confused?" The sheriff hesitated. "Can't say you have, ma'am. You've been nothing but helpful to folks in town." He turned to Edward. "You got any proof of these claims?" Edward produced an official-looking document. A warrant signed by a Massachusetts judge, authorizing the return of Lily Harrington to her father's custody for treatment of her mental condition. "And what condition would that be?" Lily demanded. "Delusions," Edward replied smoothly. "After your mother's death, you created an entirely fictional life for yourself. You believe you're a widow named Lily Morgan, when in fact you've never been married. The absurdity of the claim would have been laughable if not for the deadly serious situation." "Sheriff," Lily appealed, "I have letters from my late husband, documents proving my identity." "Forgeries," Edward dismissed. "Part of her elaborate fantasy." The standoff continued, neither side willing to concede. Maka remained silent beside Lily, but she could feel the tension radiating from him, like a thunderstorm about to break. "What about him?" the sheriff asked, gesturing toward Maka. "You claim he's holding her captive, but they don't look like captor and prisoner to me." "The savage has obviously bewitched her," Edward said dismissively. "It's further evidence of her confused state." One of the townsmen, Jeb Harris, whose wife Lily had treated for a difficult birth, spoke up unexpectedly. "Begging your pardon, Sheriff, but Mrs. Morgan saved my Mary and our baby. She's got a healer's touch like none I've seen. Don't seem crazy to me." "And what about the Indian?" another man asked. "Everyone knows he's cursed. Brings nothing but trouble." Lily had heard enough. She stepped forward, placing herself directly between the men and Maka. "This man saved my life when your bounty hunter tried to abduct me at gunpoint," she declared. "He's lived peacefully in these mountains for years, harming no one. The only curse is the fear and superstition that makes you blame him for every misfortune." A murmur ran through the group of men, some shifting uncomfortably in their saddles. "She's defending a savage," Edward pointed out. "Further proof of her derangement." "Is it deranged to judge a man by his actions rather than rumors?" Lily challenged. "Sheriff, did you know Maka tried to bring medicine to town during the fever 3 winters ago? He was shot at for his troubles." This revelation caused another stir. The sheriff frowned. "Is that true?" Before anyone could answer, a young boy burst into the clearing, riding a lathered horse. "Sheriff!" he cried. "The Miller children. They went swimming in the high creek and ain't come back. Ma says the water's rising fast from the storm upriver." The crisis immediately diverted attention from the standoff. "How long they been missing?" the sheriff demanded. "Since morning," the boy panted. "Pa's already searching, but he sent me for help." "The high creek's dangerous when it floods," Jeremiah said grimly. "Those kids won't stand a chance if they're caught in it." In the commotion, Lily felt Makara's hand on her shoulder. When she turned, his expression was resolute. "Know that creek," he said quietly. "Know where children might be trapped." Understanding dawned immediately. "You want to help search for them?" He nodded once. "Children innocent, not part of fight." Lily turned back to the gathered men, who were already organizing a search party. "Maka knows the creek better than anyone," she announced. "He can help find the children." Edward scoffed. A transparent attempt to escape justice. But the sheriff was more pragmatic. "Those kids' lives matter more than sorting out who's who right now." He fixed Maka with a hard stare. "You really know where to look?" Maka stepped forward, his imposing height causing several men to back up nervously. "Yes. Creek makes hollow place behind big rocks. Children go there for shade. When water rises, gets trapped." Sheriff Davis studied Maka with narrowed eyes, weighing the risk of trusting the feared giant against the urgent need to find the missing children. "All right," he decided. "You lead the way, but Johnson and Taylor go with you." He nodded toward two of the men. "And remember, we're only postponing our other business, not forgetting it." Edward started to protest, but the sheriff silenced him with a raised hand. "Those are the Miller kids, Bancroft. Whatever your business with Mrs. Morgan, it can wait until those children are safe." They rode hard toward the high creek, Maka running alongside the horses with a ground-eating stride that belied his size and injuries. Lily rode double with Jeremiah, anxiety knotting her stomach as dark clouds gathered overhead. The creek would be rising faster with new rain. When they reached the Miller farm, they found Samuel Miller half-drowned and frantic, having attempted to search the swollen creek himself. "They were just playing," he gasped, shivering as his wife wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. "I told them a dozen times to stay away from the high creek, but Josie's always been headstrong, and little David follows her everywhere." "How old?" Maka asked, his deep voice startling the distraught father. Miller's eyes widened at the sight of the giant Apache, fear momentarily displacing his panic. "Josie's 9. David's 6. Maka nodded and turned to study the creek, now a churning mass of muddy water and debris. Without another word, he strode toward a deer path that ran alongside the water. "Hey, wait!" Johnson called, scrambling to follow. The path quickly narrowed, forcing the men to go single file. Lily stayed close behind Maka, watching as he read signs invisible to her. A broken branch, disturbed earth, a small footprint preserved under an overhanging rock. "Children came this way," he confirmed. "Not long ago." The creek curved sharply ahead, and as they rounded the bend, Lily saw what Maka had described. A natural hollow behind a massive boulder, ordinarily a perfect shady spot on hot days. Now water swirled dangerously around the rock, the hollow partially submerged. Maka raised his hand, signaling for silence. Over the rush of water came a faint sound, a child's cry. "There, there!" Lily gasped. Maka was already moving, wading into the frigid current without hesitation. The water rose quickly to his waist, then his chest as he fought against the current toward the boulder. Twice he nearly lost his footing on the slick riverbed, his wounds clearly paining him as he grimaced with each movement. "It's too dangerous," Sheriff Davis shouted. "We need ropes." But Maka pressed on, finally reaching the boulder. He disappeared from view for a heart-stopping moment before reappearing with a small boy clutched to his chest and a girl clinging to his back. Both children were pale with cold and terror. The return journey against the current proved even more perilous. Halfway across, Maka stumbled as a hidden branch caught his leg. For a terrible moment, it seemed all three would be swept away. "Maka!" Lily cried out. With extraordinary effort, he regained his balance and continued forward, each step a battle against nature itself. When he finally reached the bank, willing hands took the children while Maka collapsed to his knees, exhaustion and pain evident in every line of his powerful body. Lily rushed to examine the children. Little David was hypothermic but conscious, while Josie had a broken arm and various cuts. Both would recover, though their escape had been narrow indeed. As she worked to splint Josie's arm, the storm broke overhead with unexpected ferocity. Lightning split the sky, followed by a crack of thunder so powerful it seemed to shake the earth. In that electric moment, a massive shape soared overhead. A golden eagle, larger than any Lily had ever seen, its wingspan casting a brief shadow over them despite the storm clouds. "Thunderbird," Maka breathed, gazing upward with an expression of awe. The Millers clutched their children closer, while the other men muttered uneasily, several making the sign of the cross. In Apache tradition, the Thunderbird was a powerful spirit, its appearance a significant omen. "It's just an eagle," Edward said dismissively, though his voice lacked conviction. Old Samuel Miller, still wrapped in his blanket, stepped forward slowly. His weathered face bore an expression Lily couldn't quite interpret as he approached Maka. "You saved my children," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "When the stories said you brought only death." He extended a trembling hand. "I've been wrong about you. We all have." Maka hesitated, clearly unused to such gestures from white men. After a moment, he accepted the handshake, his massive hand engulfing Miller's. "Not first time," Johnson said suddenly, recognition dawning on his face. "3 winters ago during the fever. I remember now. Someone left medicine bundles at the edge of town. People said they were cursed, but my wife was desperate. She used one." His eyes widened. "She was the only one on our street to survive." A murmur ran through the gathered men as connections were made, old stories re-examined. "And last spring," Taylor added slowly, "when Jenkins' barn caught fire, they said they saw a giant figure carrying out the livestock before disappearing into the night." Sheriff Davis turned to study Maka with new eyes. "Seems there might be more to the stories than we thought. Just not the parts we've been telling." Edward Bancroft watched this transformation with growing alarm. "This changes nothing," he insisted. "Whatever good deeds this savage may have performed, the fact remains that Lily Harrington needs to return to Boston." "Mrs. Morgan," Lily corrected firmly. "And I'm beginning to think you're not who you claim to be either, Mr. Bancroft. A real representative of the law would have proper identification, not just a single document that could easily be forged." The sheriff turned his attention to Edward. "She raises a fair point. I'd like to see some credentials, Mr." Edward's hand moved toward his coat, but instead of producing papers, he drew a hidden derringer. "I've had enough of this farce," he snarled, aiming the small but deadly weapon at Lily. "You're coming with me, one way or another." What happened next unfolded so quickly that Lily barely had time to register each moment. Maka surged forward with impossible speed for a wounded man. Sheriff Davis drew his pistol. Edward's derringer discharged with a sharp crack that sent birds scattering from nearby trees. And then Maka was on the ground, a fresh bloom of red staining his bandaged side, while Johnson and Taylor wrestled Edward into submission. "Maka!" Lily rushed to his side, heart pounding with fear as she examined the wound. The bullet had grazed him, reopening his previous injury rather than causing new damage. Relief made her hands tremble as she pressed a clean cloth against the bleeding. "I'm all right," he assured her, his deep voice strained but steady. Sheriff Davis secured Edward's hands behind his back with iron cuffs. Edward Bancroft, or whatever your real name is, you're under arrest for assault and attempted kidnapping. You're making a mistake, Edward snarled, still struggling. Judge Harrington will have your badge for this. We'll sort that out when we get back to town, the sheriff replied evenly. After I send a telegram to Boston inquiring about this judge and his missing daughter. 2 weeks later, Lily stood at the window of her new clinic on the edge of Copper Creek, watching as Maka carefully instructed young David Miller in the proper way to plant medicinal herbs. The boy had become Makara's shadow since the rescue, his childish acceptance untainted by the prejudices that still lingered among some adults. The clinic itself was a testament to how quickly perceptions could change. When Samuel Miller had offered the small cabin on his property for Lily's use, several townspeople had joined together to help repair and outfit it. The space was modest but functional, with examining areas, a dispensary for medicines, and living quarters for both Lily and, somewhat controversially, Maka. Still can't believe how things turned around, Mrs. Abernathy remarked, arranging clean linens on the examining table. The older woman had appointed herself Lily's assistant, bringing a welcome efficiency to the clinic's operations. From cursed giant to hero in one afternoon. People see what they expect to see, Lily replied, watching as Josie Miller joined her brother and Maka in the garden, her splinted arm not deterring her enthusiasm. It just took something dramatic to change their expectations. The telegram that arrived 4 days after Edward's arrest had confirmed what Lily already knew. There was no Judge William Harrington in Boston with a missing daughter named Lily. Edward Kingsley, as his real name turned out to be, was indeed a bounty hunter, but one with a reputation for unscrupulous methods and fabricated claims. His target had never been Lily specifically. He'd been tracking a woman who had fled an abusive husband in Chicago, following false leads across several territories. When he heard about a lone female healer in Copper Creek, he'd concocted the Boston heiress story as a way to claim her, hoping her isolated position would make his deception easier to maintain. Sheriff says that Kingsley Fellow is being transferred to Chicago next week, Mrs. Abernathy continued, her voice dropping to a gossipy whisper despite the empty clinic. Apparently he's wanted for similar schemes in 3 states. Good riddance, Lily said with feeling. The fear of being forcibly taken to an asylum on false pretenses had haunted her dreams for days after the incident. Outside, Maka straightened from his gardening, wincing slightly as his healing wounds protested the movement. His recovery had been remarkably swift, aided by a combination of his grandmother's traditional remedies and Lily's medical knowledge, a partnership that now formed the foundation of their unique clinic. Not everyone in Copper Creek had embraced the changes. Some still crossed the street to avoid Maka, and the pastor had delivered a pointed sermon about unseemly arrangements, when Lily made it clear that Maka would be residing at the clinic as her colleague, not her servant. But such voices were increasingly in the minority. The Miller children's rescue had been the catalyst, but other stories had emerged in its wake. Mysterious help during blizzards, game left at the doorsteps of starving families, a forest fire inexplicably contained before it reached outlying farms. Incidents previously attributed to luck or divine intervention now reconsidered in light of a gentle giant who moved silently through the mountains, helping without acknowledgement or thanks. When the first patients arrived specifically requesting the Indian healer's remedies, Lily had known that a corner had been turned. Makara's extensive knowledge of medicinal plants, combined with her formal training, offered treatments unavailable anywhere else in the territory. Pragmatism ultimately outweighed prejudice, especially when it came to matters of health. A knock at the door interrupted her reflections. Sheriff Davis entered, removing his hat as he stepped inside. "Mrs. Morgan," he greeted her, then nodded to Mrs. Abernathy. "Just stopped by to let you know I received another telegram from Chicago. They're sending a deputy to collect Kingsley next week." "Thank you for telling me," Lily said, offering him a cup of tea which he accepted gratefully. "Also wanted to check on your associate." The sheriff still seemed unsure what term to use for Maka. How's he healing up? Remarkably well, Lily replied. He'll be fully recovered within another week or so. The sheriff nodded, his expression thoughtful as he watched Maka through the window. Strange how things work out. 6 months ago, men were organizing hunting parties to drive the cursed giant from these mountains. Now he's teaching our children about plants. People can change, Lily observed, when given reason to. Some faster than others, the sheriff acknowledged. Mrs. Wilson still refuses to let him near her property, and Reverend Parks continues to voice his concerns about your arrangement here. They'll come around, Lily said with more confidence than she felt. Or they won't. Either way, we'll continue our work. Autumn painted the mountains in brilliant hues of gold and crimson as Lily recorded the day's patience in her journal. 6 months had passed since the confrontation with Kingsley, each day bringing small changes to their lives in Copper Creek. The clinic flourished beyond her expectations. People traveled from neighboring settlements seeking their unique combination of traditional and frontier medicine. Makara's remedies, once feared as Indian magic, were now specifically requested, especially for ailments that had resisted conventional treatments. Last patient gone home, Maka announced, entering from the dispensary where he'd been preparing tinctures. Though his English had improved considerably with daily practice, he still spoke in the same measured cadence, each word chosen with care. Mrs. Fletcher's cough? Lily asked, closing her journal. Better. Gave more syrup for night. He moved with quiet confidence through the space that had become truly theirs, no longer awkward or apologetic about his presence. Outside, the first chill of evening descended as the sun dipped behind the mountains. Maka added wood to the stove while Lily prepared their evening meal, a comfortable routine they had established over the months of working and living together. Sheriff Davis brought news today, Lily said as they sat down to eat. The territorial governor is visiting next month. Apparently, word of our clinic has reached the capital. Maka absorbed this information with his usual thoughtfulness. Good news. I think so. Recognition might bring more support, perhaps even funding for supplies. She smiled. And it suggests attitudes are changing beyond just Copper Creek. Progress had come in small, imperfect increments. Some families still refused Maka's treatments, and certain town events remained uncomfortable for him to attend. But children waved to him openly on the street now, and most adults had progressed from fear to cautious acceptance. After dinner, Maka disappeared briefly into his room, returning with something wrapped in simple brown paper. For you, he said, placing it carefully on the table between them. Made it. Curious, Lily unwrapped the package to reveal a blanket unlike any she had seen. Woven in the traditional Apache style, it combined geometric patterns with symbols she recognized from Maka's paintings and carvings. The craftsmanship was exquisite, each thread placed with the same precision he brought to his medicines. It's beautiful, she breathed, running her fingers over the intricate design. Wedding blanket, he explained, his voice softer than usual. In my tribe, man makes for woman he paused, searching for the right word. For woman he chooses. The significance of the gift settled over Lily like the warmth of the blanket itself. They had lived and worked side by side for months, their partnership deepening into something neither had named until this moment. Among my people, Maka continued carefully, blanket asks question. Woman can accept or refuse. Lily looked up to find his dark eyes watching her with an intensity that made her heart quicken. This giant of a man, who had endured rejection and isolation for most of his life, was offering her the most vulnerable part of himself. What question does it ask? She whispered, though she already knew. If you would walk life path together. His hand moved to cover hers, engulfing it completely yet touching her with characteristic gentleness. As husband and wife, the question hung between them, momentous yet somehow inevitable. Their lives had become so intertwined that formality seemed almost unnecessary. Yet, the offering of the blanket, with all its cultural significance, showed how deeply Maka valued their union. "Many will not understand," he added, giving her the space to consider all implications. "Town already talks. This would make talk louder." Lily smiled, thinking of the whispers that had followed them from the beginning. "Let them talk. I stopped living by others' expectations long ago." She stood, bringing the blanket with her, and draped it around both their shoulders as she sat beside him. "Yes, Maka, I accept your question and your blanket." The ceremony took place 2 weeks later in their garden, with flowers still blooming despite the autumn chill. It was a small gathering. The Millers and their children, Mrs. Abernathy, Sheriff Davis, and a few others who had become friends rather than merely patients. No minister presided, as Reverend Parks had refused to officiate. Instead, they exchanged vows in their own words, blending elements of both their traditions. Maka spoke in Apache first, then translated, promising to walk beside her always, to share her burdens, to create beauty in her darkest days. Lily promised to see him always as he truly was, to honor his wisdom, to create a home where neither would ever walk alone again. As the sun set behind the mountains, casting long shadows across their small gathering, Lily looked at the man who had once been feared as cursed, this gentle giant whose heart had always been his greatest strength. The journey that had brought them together seemed both impossible and inevitable, a convergence of two paths that society had never intended to cross. Later, as they stood together on the porch of their clinic, watching the first stars appear, Maka wrapped the wedding blanket around her shoulders. "Not cursed now," he observed quietly. "Blessed." Lily leaned into his strength, thinking of all they had overcome and all that still lay ahead. There would be challenges, prejudices not yet conquered, hearts not yet changed, but they would face them together, the healer and her gentle giant, rewriting not just their own destinies but perhaps, in some small way, the story of the world around them. "We both are," she agreed, reaching for his hand. "And so is anyone who finds the courage to see beyond fear to the truth beneath."